Introduce the panel here real quick. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Mike Phillips, Senior Pastor of Pathway Church. This is Pastor Rich Hooper, part of our executive team. He's our admin pastor and many other things. This is Pastor Trey. He's over our worship and tech arts and many other things. This is our executive team. And then we have Pastor Brandon over here tonight who will be moderating and giving us the questions. So the whole idea about tonight is to let you, our church, know, those of you who may be interested in visiting the church, you may have never been here before, and how that's going to work coming back, and even those in our community, and maybe even pastors that are looking for input. We don't claim to have all the answers. We certainly do not. But I don't think any church does right now, so we've really thought this thing out as much as possible, planned it out. We've pinged along with the president and his crisis team, of course, Governor Abbott, and then our local authorities as well. So this is the best we can do for us. We also want to say on the front end that in no way do we believe our plan is superior to anybody else's. Many people are reopening different ways. We just feel like this is the best plan for us. I want to cast a little vision on the front end before we get into the details. I asked them to name this plan Choices because I'm just that creative. Anyway, whatever. I don't get a whole lot of creative input, but I just said choices because a lot of choices have been taken away from us as a society, and I'm not exactly keen on church being one of those places where you don't have choices. We want to give you as many choices as we can, but they have to be within the framework that we've been given. So we're going to give you as many choices as we can that are not at the expense of another person's health and this sort of thing. I want to say this on the front end, that whatever choice an individual makes or a family makes within this plan to continue to worship at home for an extended period of time, to rejoin Pentecost Sunday if we're able to do that, and we'll get into why do I say if in just a moment. There are some things out of our control, but I feel pretty confident in that date. Everybody's choice is a good choice. If someone chooses to wear PPE, a protective mask or whatever they want, that's a great choice. If someone chooses not to, there's no negativity to your choice. So we're going to respect and embrace. This is how we're going to show the love of Christ to one another and our community, and that's by not only being able to make our own choice, but respecting other people's choices and there being no negativity to that, including our area churches and how they've all chosen to reopen, and we respect that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Rich and let him go over the basic bullet points of the plan, and then we'll get into questions right after that.
You know, Scripture says that a man's mind plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. And one of the things I appreciate about Pastor Mike is he is an intuitive leader, and he does hear from the Spirit, but he also appreciates and really expects us to have a plan, to put that plan in place. And so in all of this, we have prayed about God, what do you want us to do? Bringing you the loaves and fishes, if you remember the story of feeding the 5,000, for you to be able to use to really feed the multitude and to bless the congregation of Pathway Church. And so we put a plan together, as he said, based on the guidelines from President Trump, based on Governor Abbott, presented within our region, Princeton, Farmersville, and surrounding communities. So we put this plan together, and we really feel like it's the best plan that we have in order to keep you safe, to help keep you healthy, but also make sure that our worship experience is one that we can fully enjoy and fully embrace. So we've developed this plan into 3 phases, pretty closely related to, it's really 4 phases, but pretty closely related to President Trump's outline that he put out a few weeks ago. Now, with all of these phases, we will still adhere to the CDC guidelines, which we've been really preaching this whole time, is washing your hands and avoiding touching your face, sneezing or coughing into a tissue in the bend of your elbow, disinfect frequently used items and frequently touched surfaces, and then using face coverings while in public as much as possible, particularly when using mass transit or in mass gatherings. So all of that is going to be within these phases, but we really want to point to the first phase, which officially began yesterday, as of May the 3rd, this will take us for 2 weeks. Each one of these phases will be in place for a period of 2 weeks. And then as we progress through the phases, as conditions continue to get better, and we'll talk about what that looks like in just a minute, we can move into the next phase. So each phase is a 2-week period of time, and then we'll be reevaluated as we near the end of the phase if we can move into the next phase. So phase 1 basically is weekend worship continuing through our online campus. What an experience that's been for many people. All vulnerable individuals should continue to shelter in place. Now, let me just say this as I'm reading this. This whole thing is online for you at the website. If you've not yet looked at it, go to pathwayliving.com. At the very top, you'll see where you can actually download and read this. But I just want to kind of highlight some of the items in each phase. Vulnerable individuals, as defined by the CDC and the World Health Organization, is number 1, elderly individuals, and number 2, individuals with serious underlying health conditions. Throughout phase 1, they're encouraged to still gather in their homes, and so shelter in place. Phase 1 opens it up to at least up to 10 individuals that may gather in homes or on the main campus here in Farmersville. We're referring to the site where we are now as our main campus, and then we have our online campus. For groups larger than 10, we ask that they continue to meet online. A lot of our groups have been meeting through Zoom and online virtual meetings, and we ask those groups that are larger than 10 to continue to do that. And then groups under that can meet here at the main campus.
We've had a couple of creative things. Some of the ladies met out here in the parking lot two or three nights and sat in the back of their trucks and things like that. So there's been creative ways to do it too, but you know, if you have something like that in mind, that's fine too.
Anyone that is meeting at the main campus, we ask to refrain from physical contact in order to respect appropriate distancing. That's probably going to be one of the hardest things for us to do because we're so loving and we want to hug and we miss that, but we just want to respect that. And so we're going to continue to ask that anyone that meets here will respect that and refrain from physical contact in any way. Of course, hand sanitizer is available on the main campus and is available for frequent use. And then as Pastor mentioned, PPE, mask, personal protection equipment are welcomed. And we will be adhering to that with our guest services team. We'll be wearing the masks so that we want to make sure that you know that we're taking all the precautions. So that's phase 1, basically with those restrictions. I guess the biggest difference here is opening it up to individuals. Up to 10 people can meet here at the main campus.
So to make it clear here, this is not weekend worship.
Right.
Okay? Because we already had some of those questions, right? Weekend worship will begin, if everything goes to plan, Pentecost Sunday.
Yeah.
Everything else we're talking about here are small groups, team meetings, and things of that nature.
Lead team meetings,
Right.
yeah. So that's what we're referring to in phases 1 and in 2.
And can I say this one more about the no physical contact? Because that's hard on me particularly. I'm a hugger. I get it, okay? This is the first 4 weeks in particular. Well, actually, when we meet back, we're still asking the first 4 Sundays. So this is the next couple of months. I know that seems weird. I just want to cover some of these as we go along to some people. But that's more about respecting what we don't know. Nobody's going to wear a T-shirt, or I haven't seen them do it yet, that says, I have underlying conditions. I have respiratory issues. I have low immune, whatever. And it's not really, I don't think they should have to do that. And some people may have situations they don't know about. So that's about respecting, not just imposing, but not putting someone in a position to have to reject physical contact. And so as hard as that is, like I said, this is, I don't like the word new norm when it comes to this. I don't think this is forever, but it is for a period of time. And the last thing we want is to be part of some reversal in the positive direction all of this is going. And so hear our heart on this kind of thing. I hate a lot of rules, okay? But hear our heart and the choices we're giving you within all this.
Yeah, it's more like giving you rails to run on, because if you walked in here and didn't know what was expected of anybody, we would all just be paralyzed thinking, what can we do and what can we not do? So these are more rails. Phase 2, which if everything continues to decrease as far as the amount of hospitalizations and death rate and those kinds of things within our region. Then we would move into phase 2 starting May the 17th. And basically the only difference in phase 1 and phase 2 is we open it up to any other gathering outside of weekend worship can be up to 50 individuals gathering in homes or at the main campus. So that's the difference between phase 1, phase 2. We'll move for 2 weeks into phase 1, where you can meet up to 10 individuals in the homes or on the main campus outside of weekend worship. That will still continue to be online exclusively. Same for phase 2, online worship exclusively, but we can move into having a lot of our lead teams, our guest services, our Pathway Kids. Those teams are larger than 10 people, so we can begin to have those groups come in and meet to do some training and to do some information sharing. So again, that phase will last for 2 weeks, and that takes us through the end of May, through May 30th. And then, as we move into phase 3, this is where we've been talking about the opening up of our main campus. So as Pastor has mentioned several times, our plan at this point, if everything goes accordingly to what we think it's going to happen, the main campus will open up for services, for weekend worship services, on Sunday, May the 31st.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I just touched my face.
Okay.
You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, we'll need to get some hand sanitizer.
Don't, please, someone get the sanitizing
Yeah,
team here
right.
now.
My face.
I won't.
I'm not going to touch your face, but
Pretty
I did.
much guaranteed
I'm
that I won't
aware
touch either of your
somebody
faces.
watching right now just went, oh no, he touched his face.
Oh, I did too. I touched my nose earlier and I went, oh,
My nose has been itching the whole time. I'm
bad
not gonna
habits
scratch.
die
I've been
hard.
doing it the whole time.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, prohibition creates desire. So
These
you
are-
tell me I
this is
can't
hard.
touch my face is when I really want
That's
to.
the microphone I normally use right there. So
Great.
I'm going to touch your face if you keep it up.
So May the 31st is when phase 3 will begin, and that's when the main campus will open for weekend worship services. May 31st is Pentecost Sunday. That's why Pastor Mike has referenced a lot of times that we're opening up Pentecost Sunday. That's our goal. Now, here's what phase 3 looks like. We are still saying that we need to take precautions, and we will take precautions, but the vulnerable individuals, elderly individuals, those that are susceptible and have serious underlying health conditions, they should practice physical distancing, minimizing exposure where distancing may not be practical, and anyone showing symptoms related to COVID-19 should stay home. So vulnerable individuals can come and be a part of our weekend worship services, but they just ask that you try to distance yourself from other individuals. And we will have a team in place during phase 3 for sure
Can I
that will
interject there?
sanitize the facility between services.
Yeah, and I want you to continue that, but I just want to say this. I don't want you to feel like there's any negativism to you postponing or continuing to enjoy the online campus for a prolonged period of time. There is no negativity to that. I want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to come into the church building and just feel tense and anxiety the whole time. That's not a wonderful experience for you. There is zero negativity to you saying, hey, I'm going to continue to enjoy the church online for an extended period of time. Zero negativity to that at all. But we're going to work hard here to make things safe as we can.
yeah, and with that, we are constantly, as this is still a fairly new thing for us, we are working tirelessly to make sure that the online experience is the most fulfilling experience it can be. When we were all kind of just forced into that world, there was a moment of, oh, this doesn't feel right. But it's been so encouraging to see the people of God just gather in their homes and join together in worship. But we aspire to make that as fulfilling as it is here in the room. But on the flip side of that, to make here in the room as safe as online. It's a very, very lofty goal. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to attain it, but we are pressing on towards it with every single resource we have available to make that happen.
I really loved it when we began to cast vision for the online campus, which was way before we heard anything about COVID-19. The Lord really began to impress on Pastor Mike to cast vision, and then we embraced that vision and began to really cast the vision. But Pastor Trey, you had said, this is something that came, I don't know if it was original with you, but I'm just going to say it was, casting the vision between the difference between streaming services and having an online campus. We never want to go back to or go to a point of we're just streaming our services. It's always going to be interactive, and it's going to be a worship experience.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want to just create a portal to view service. We want to create an avenue to minister. And so whether you're choosing to view online because of some concerns health-wise, or maybe you're just out of town, our goal, as much as possible, is for you to receive what God has for you in any given service that we offer.
You and your team have done a phenomenal job to continue to open that portal for everyone to be able to worship on Sundays, and I appreciate the online campus team who has come in and just jumped in, and you provided.
Yeah, you guys are
leadership.
awesome.
Yeah,
right now,
rock.
there's one person in the for those you can't see.
Yes.
There's one person in this room outside of this platform. It's Colton back here behind this camera. He's waving now, which once again you can't see.
Yeah.
But he's one of the guys that's been faithful to be here and serve all of you. Sunday after Sunday. But thank you to the entire team. You guys are doing an amazing job.
Done a great job. So within phase 3, and we will continue, as he said, to offer that online experience, worship experience. I believe Governor Abbott even said, when he talked about some of the restaurants opening, he said, just because you can open doesn't mean you have to. And so just because we're opening the main campus, we want you to, as Pastor Mike said, we want you to feel comfortable to be able to come in and to engage in person. But until that time, you have the full-blown worship experience available to you through online.
And new things coming.
And absolutely, yeah. We are bringing some new things into our online campus that you'll be seeing hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So vulnerable individuals, still take precautions and still be careful there. We'll have a team in place that will be sanitizing the facility between services. Before that time, we are going to bring in a team that's going to be completely sanitizing the whole building and
including all of us.
Absolutely. Spray us down.
So spray us down.
Yes, Lord. Sorry. Spray us down, Lord. A preacher can preach anything.
That's right.
You throw a topic out and we can preach about
Not that he should.
it. No, just because
But
it's...
you could.
Just Paul says, here I go, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's profitable. All right, so a team's going to be in place to sanitize the facility. And then this is the other thing. Pathway Kids will resume their classes with precautionary measures in place. And we can talk more about this, but basically we'll be checking for visible symptoms of COVID-19 among the kids that come in. Teachers will be wearing PPE, and we'll have contactless check-in. You'll be able to check your kids in without having to touch a screen or anything like that. So we just met today to work through some of the details on that. I'll be glad to share more details if anybody had any questions about that. But basically, when we open the main campus, we will resume Pathway Kids classes and taking those precautions to make sure this is a safe environment for everyone, including our kids, through the first Sunday in June. And then, starting June 14th, that Sunday, we're going to be going forward. I want to be careful to say that because we're never going back. We have great things ahead of us, and we're going to be going forward to what we consider our new normal, or the way that we're going to continue worshiping. And basically the same as what we just spelled out through phase 3, with the exception of we will continue to ask our staff and volunteers to not initiate physical contact. This is what Pastor Mike was talking about earlier. We don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but it will be reciprocated if that is initiated. A handshake, a hug, a high five. If somebody comes in wants to give us a high five, then we will reciprocate that. But we want you to know that this is a comfortable place for you to come. And then we will continue to sanitize frequently touched items between services. Pathway Kids will continue to have the precautionary measures in place as well, and then we'll sanitize the classrooms weekly. And that will continue on until we feel at a time where it's comfortable to lift some of these new practices, and we'll just continue to move as the Lord leads us and as we see direction and data come through to see how the spread or the decline of the spread of COVID-19 continues on. So
I know we have a lot of questions. We want to get to those. A lot of the things you addressed here will probably be asking the questions, and we will end promptly at 7 o'clock at the latest. And I want to close out with a little more of the heart of this thing. So Brandon, you got some questions for us?
Yes, so for those of you that are tuning in, if you have a question, you can text your question to the number 62488. This is our Pathway Church text number. Feel free to text your questions. I'm receiving them live here. They can be for anyone or everyone. We just want to take some time to really talk to you guys about what's going on, and we want to make sure we don't leave any stone unturned here. We want to make sure we answer all of your questions. We got about 40 minutes, so I want to start out with
The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. Ask it. Somebody's wondering about it other than you.
Yes, good. So this question is like super popular. I think this is one that everybody's kind of worrying about. How rigid will we be on social distancing when we come back to live services?
Can I jump on that? This is a biggie. I had rather put off, and don't go into a panic attack when I say this, but I had rather put off returning to in-person services longer if it needed to happen than to come back to something that I just don't want to enforce, and that's social distancing. Now, this is Mike Phillips talking. You need to understand that as a leader, I know people fall into camps, and some people are going to think we're being too extreme, and some people are going to think we're not being extreme enough, and some people just trust our judgment. And it's okay wherever you fall, but I do not personally believe for us as a church that trying to police social distancing, because here's what it would look like, and we looked at this strongly, and some churches are doing it, and if you're doing this, that's fine, I get it. Some big churches are doing this, but it would be additional multiple services, registering for a service, pre-registering for a service, seating families together, but no group could be closer than 6 feet to the other group. And we felt like that all of the protocols in place would become the focus, and it would be very difficult to worship in that environment for us the way that we approach that. And so there were so many moving parts. It felt so complicated. Many of you know this. Some of you know this. If you've gone through our Discover class, you know our 7 core values. The second one is simplicity. Number 1 is transparency. Number 2 is right above my door. If you come into my office and you walk out, you're going to see simplify above my door. If it gets complicated, I don't enjoy it. And complicated things tend to break down and they're not enjoyable. So what we want to do is the simplest thing we can do. So I have experienced a high level of responsibility in our community. I'll give you a couple of examples. I go to Brookshire's. By the way, I just want to say, he may or may not be watching, but Mike, I almost called Mike Pastor Mike. He's like the pastor of Brookshire's. And all the staff at Brookshire's, you are amazing. Yeah, a big hand clap, because I've never felt weird in all of this there. Except when they were out of the type of cereal that I liked the one time. You know, I almost pitched a fit, but I didn't do it. They have done such a great job through all this, but I see our community being respectful. And it's like everybody's just doing what they're supposed to do. I went into Dollar General last night, and everybody just stayed a certain distance line, and nobody acted weird. Sometimes we joke about it, like I was coming down an aisle, and a lady had her mask on, and I said, okay, I got to go this way. How we need to do this? And she said, here's what we're going to do. And she took charge. And we laughed it off.
I call that the distancing dance, huh?
It was a little dance.
Huh?
And I just have not seen this disrespectfulness to all this in our community. So why would I expect it in our church? Knowing how loving this church is, I believe they're responsible enough, and I trust our church enough to practice responsible social distancing. We cannot successfully do that in this auditorium and have church the way that we feel like we're supposed. We just do not believe that we believe that all the process will become the distraction. So now, having said that, you can sit wherever you want to sit, but we're not going to police social distancing once we return here per se. We're going to trust people to exercise it as responsibly as they can. And we're going to have that's one of the reasons we're asking for lack of a better term, 0 physical contact the first 4 Sundays, because we feel like that's sort of a compromise in what we're doing. Now, if this thing ramps up and it's not prudent to come together under those circumstances, we will have to rethink our reopening date. But I do not want your first experience back at Pathway to be odd and awkward and off-putting. That's my heart, and I hope you, I want to say respect that, but at least accept it.
Yeah.
That's the heart of us on that.
And you know, as we've navigated the growth that we've experienced here at Pathway and putting together strategic plans, one of the things that we've constantly looked at is what are the bottlenecks? What are the things that we could consider to be that would choke down the growth? And then the other thing that Pastor Mike has, a question he's asked many times is how many people are we going to tell that can't come in here? When we had look at those bottlenecks, what are some of the things that would cause that to happen? And I really feel like that trying to do the social distancing, registering for a service, at some point in time, we would have to tell someone, you know what, we don't have room for you. And that's just something that's just outside of what we really
Can we
feel.
interject this here so it'll make some sense? I say this humbly because I remember when Lori and I got here, there were 25 people, plus me, her, and 4 people Dr. Mitchell begged, my pastor begged to come help us with worship that Sunday. And like I've looked around here on some Sundays and there's been 20, 25 people around the building, and I thought, I just pull up and I was like, wow, I got a crowd today. But on a typical weekend now, we'll run 350 to 400 people, or we did before. But we have 1,200 church members. And I have a strong feeling that many of them that didn't often attend before are going to want to. And I'm not going to tell somebody they can't come to church. So we're giving this thing the best compromise we have to give you the best experience possible. I don't want to be negative towards the Pentecost Day date. I'm positive about it. I just don't want to make a hardcore promise that I can't keep should it become irresponsible to do so for us to move forward the way we want to move forward.
Yeah, and with the social distancing, that's the reason we've kind of harped on that, just being respectful and considerate of everyone. Our kids, if you've been tuning into Kids Church, Pathway Kids, a couple of weeks ago, the verse was Philippians, oh goodness, I don't even remember now, but it says that we should consider each other. Colton's trying to tell me what it was. 2, 3, and 4. It was chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. Is that what that was? Yes, got it. Colton's on it.
Go, Colton.
But it was in humility, consider others more significant, more important than yourself. Just consider others first. And in light of a lack of restriction, that we're trying not to have these extra guidelines and rules. If we all just make it a point to be respectful and considerate of each other's space and the decisions each other is making, then we shouldn't have any issues. So not as much to worry about there.
And I just don't see why we're not going to experience the same thing here that I've experienced all over our community.
Absolutely. Those are some good answers from our executive pastors. So moving on to the next question, what precautions are you taking to protect the health of our infants and children?
Well, I can speak to that. We just met today, Pastor Kim and I and Sarah, to talk about some of the details there. We are always cleaning and sanitizing, and I say we, it's usually not one of us, but we have someone that comes in every week anyway to sanitize the frequently touched items. They will be removing toys that that have fur or that would harbor any kind of infectious bacteria, virus, whatever. Thingy, yeah. The medical term is thingy, but I didn't think you'd understand that. So, but they are going to be taking those out. Then they are also going to be, our teachers will be wearing masks to start off with. We are also doing contactless check-in. So we're going to cut down the amount of times that you as a parent will have to touch a screen to check your child in. Pastor Kim is going to be sharing a lot of these details, specific details, with our team and with our parents as we go along. But there's an app that you hear, but when you check your child in using the barcode, it prints off the tag. You can take the tag and put it on your child, and you'll never have to touch a screen. So we'll make sure we're going to sanitize the hands of all the kids as they come in. Also, we're going to restrict who is able to go up the steps into the Pathway Kids area, so we can make sure that that continues to be a safe environment. So we're taking a lot of these precautions in the nursery. The nursery attendants and those who work with the toddlers, if they have to change a diaper, are already wearing gloves, but they'll continue to do that. We'll continue to clean hands after that to make sure that our hands and the hands of the child stay clean throughout the whole process. So we're really making sure that we're covering a lot of the bases to keep this a safe and clean environment for your kids to learn about God here while we're worshiping and hearing the word of the Lord here in the main auditorium as well.
And I know for a fact, we're adopting identical protocols of our local child care facilities. These are regulated facilities, so they're held to higher standard. You got something on that?
Well, I was just going to say, today in our meeting today, we actually went to the CDC website,
Okay.
the link that was sent to us, and looked at all of their guidelines. And some of those guidelines are for child care facilities that are day-long facilities. Some of them don't apply, but a lot of them do. And so a lot of the things that we're talking about putting into place are exactly what you would experience when you take your child to a daycare facility. Yeah. So we want to make sure that that's in place. And that'll begin, those practices will begin the day we open the main campus here. May 31st is when we're planning to do that. Those practices will begin then, and we'll continue to use some of these practices for sure the first 4 Sundays. We'll continue to use those, and some of them maybe even carry on after that.
Good. So to add on to that question, there was also another question of where do we check our kids in and where do we pick up the tags? Did the location stay the same, or did they change with the new check-in process?
Well, the location stayed the same, but it also changed. So again, just kind of, I think it was being led by the Spirit, intuition. We changed check-in from being upstairs to downstairs a month before we heard about COVID-19. And so we began to move it downstairs so that you as a parent could do self-check-in. You could just use the barcode to check in your children. So it is downstairs. The check-in facility is right inside the lobby as you walk in the front door. You just go right next to the staircase. You can use the barcode to scan in, and it'll print the tag right there in a printer. You grab that tag, and you can put one on your child, keep the other tag for yourself to identify. And then you will take your kids over to the staircase, and your kids will then be escorted upstairs to the classroom. You keep your tag. At the end of service, you'll come right back to that staircase. At the bottom of the staircase, hand your tag to an adult escort that's there, and then they will get your child and bring them back to you. So again, it's going to be a safe environment, and it's going to be convenient because it's right as you walk in the door. And so again, we made these changes even before we even knew anything about what was about to happen, of course. But so yes, it's a new location. But if you were here 2 or 3 Sundays before we had to shut our main campus down, then you know exactly where it is, right inside the door.
Good. So before we continue, I do want to just talk to those of you who are quickly tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to text them to our Pathway Church text number, which is 62488. We got about 25 more minutes left, so I got a couple more questions for you guys lined up really quickly. So during phase 2, how will we determine what 50 people looks like at the main campus at one time? Is it by invitation only? Is it by predetermined events, or what would that look like?
Okay.
I vote you.
So, yeah, okay. Phase 2 is basically still within the social distancing guidelines. So we still, just during phase 2, as a reminder, weekend worship will be online exclusively. So we won't necessarily have weekend worship available to just anybody. So in order for the groups to meet here, the groups that will meet here, training group, lead team groups, or even our small groups, they will have to be scheduled ahead of time and by invitation based on you know that you've been asked to come to a meeting. So if you're just showing up to a meeting, obviously the meetings are going to be lead team meetings for training purposes. So you'll have an invitation. They'll be scheduled. It won't just be we open the doors and hope 50 people show up. The other thing is we want to make sure that we invite only those that would apply to that meeting. So by that, we can use those numbers to try to stay within those guidelines as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, just to put it in plain English, don't just show up before Pentecost Sunday. That's when we're reopen to anybody that wants to come. Once we reopen, we're not going to limit attendance, okay? So just to make that very clear, before then, these are all scheduled meetings. So
Good. So on the note of reopening and when will things resume, we have a question. When will Pathway Youth Services resume?
shouldn't we let our youth pastor answer
Why
that?
don't you just answer that?
So for those of you watching that are interested in Pathway Youth, we will actually be resuming services the following Wednesday after Pentecost Sunday. So that, I really overpronounced that. That will be, so we're looking at June 3rd will be the first Wednesday that we're actually back at the main campus. We're super excited. I think this is the first time I've actually announced the date live in front of people. So that is June 3rd. That is a Wednesday, the first day we're looking at getting Pathway Youth Services back at the main campus.
And that will that's going to ping right along with Sunday. So if we have to push our reopening on Sunday out, they'll also push that night. And I keep saying that not to rain down negativity on this thing, but I just don't want somebody to feel like I made a promise we couldn't keep. So with that, they'll ping right along. They will start the first Wednesday night after the first Sunday we're here. Hopefully that's Pentecostal Sunday. Pentecostal Sunday. It could be.
Yeah.
First time back. I don't know.
Come on now.
I don't know. I
Someone's
can't
gonna
make
do
no
some
promises.
laps. Someone's going to do some laps.
Anyway.
So real quick also with that, we are exploring some avenues and possibilities of being able to stream, to host that online as well. But we're not 100% on that yet. There's still some logistics to work out there. But if you are one of the students and mom and dad said, hey, you're staying home, we don't want you to be left out. We want you to be able to be part of this as well.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for details on that as we get them coming to you. But we're working on that as well.
Yeah, awesome answer from the youth pastor. So
Amazing.
Yeah, that guy.
So moving on, we got another question about a key part of what we do here at Pathway. Somebody asked, will communion cups be purchased or pre-prepared like we've been doing in the past?
Shouldn't we just go to a communal cup? Everybody just drink out of one cup?
Same chalice.
Absolutely
No.
Nod. Got it. That's a good question.
Yeah.
We put a lot of thought and debate into this.
Yep.
And once again, this is a compromise, but I'm gonna announce it because I'm gonna own it. So if you get mad at me. Because I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't like it.
Sure.
We will never go back to open containers again. Okay. It's just not moving forward, it's just not a good move. So we're gonna have the prepackaged little thingies. Well, Linda Gay, I love you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right now, she just don't quit the church.
Yeah.
So they have the bread on top. There's a little film over it and so forth. So we're finding the easiest to open. We're looking at even ways to make that easier. They'll all be out in the little cup holders and the chairs as to cut down a lot of movement and that sort of thing. But this is the right move. This is the right sanitary, safe move to do. And so we'll never go back to open containers on that. So grieve it, bury it, and let's get on with it.
I mean, we're still going to do communion.
Always.
At least once a month.
Always, yeah.
And communion is still going to be communion. I mean, it's still going to, whatever package it comes in, it still represents the
right.
blood and body of Jesus. So the impact, the representation of communion, that's still intact.
Yeah.
And that's something that we will still celebrate and still observe. It's just the delivery method where we used to pass the trays and the trays had to go in front of everybody. That just doesn't seem to be the right thing. It is not the right thing to do. So we will have the prepackaged communion elements in the seat back, in the cup holders and the seat backs in front of you when you come in on those communion Sundays, which, by the way, this first Sunday we come back, Pentecost Sunday, May 31st, is the last Sunday of the month, which is typically when we do communion. So we're going to be doing communion that first Sunday that we're back. So we'll just, right out of the gate, we'll do it the new way.
And it'll be fine.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So for those of you that are just tuning in, again, if you have any questions, feel free to text your question to the number 62488. That's our Pathway Church text number. Again, if you have any questions, 62488. So
Before you ask the next question, I'd like to get in some of the changes we're going to make based on our new time format, which you've already experienced. You may not have known it. And this was one of those things that, boy, they had to duke it out with me over, but I'm so glad we've done it. It happened for practical reasons, but let's talk about our new, Pastor Trey, you can talk about our new time, and then Pastor Rich, you can talk about some of the things we will forego based on that, and let's tell them the why behind all this. There are good whys behind all this.
So the biggest change is we've gone from a roughly 75-minute format down to a 60-minute format. So over the last couple weekends, if you haven't noticed, then great, you haven't noticed. But for the last 2 weekends, we've had a 1-hour service, and that's for a number of reasons. Primarily, it is to give us time in between services to clean and sanitize areas and items that are frequently touched. We want to make sure that we have enough time for that second service to come in and have a clean, safe environment that the first service had. It also, for those of you who are choosing to attend online, gives you a bit more streamlined service. Personally, being the father of two almost 3-year-olds, getting them to not be 3 years old for 75 minutes is really hard. 60 minutes is still hard, but a little easier. So to make a more streamlined service, more fulfilling atmosphere, so we pulled that back by making some tweaks and adjustments to the elements that are in that service. Which
and one of those elements that you may not miss, because we haven't been doing it for the last 2 months that we've been doing worship online, is passing offering baskets. Most of our giving is done, I would say 95% of our giving, of those who give, are doing so electronically. We have a very few people who are still giving through cash or check, and we appreciate any method that you give, but most of our giving has been transitioned to online. We've been at 80% or more giving online for a while. So because of that online transition to giving, that was one of the elements that we thought, you know what, we could take the time that we have to pass the baskets, we could probably take that out of the service and wouldn't miss a whole lot because of the online giving option. Now, we will still have, in the worship center, out in the lobby, we still have giving stations. So if you are a traditional giver and that you give, you'll still be able to drop that offering into those giving stations in the worship center and in the lobby on your way in or on your way out from the service. So there's still an opportunity to do that, but that was one element that we felt like that we could take out of the service that would help us to trim down that time if we needed it. So,
and I'm going to cast a little vision here. We'll get some more questions in a minute. Everything we're doing now is to open up bandwidth for growth. So Pastor Rich mentioned bottlenecks a minute ago. So bottlenecks, anything, any part of an organization or an assembly line or a sports team or anything, it's like the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. It's the lowest area of capacity, the thing that limits your capacity. We feel strongly that God has called us to grow as a church, to win souls. And so we're pushing towards our next big push or the thing God's put on our heart is over the next 5 years to be able to grow to 1,000 people in this building. Now, the Lord gave me a word prophetically when I first got here, and like most things, you don't really comprehend what He's saying to you, but I told a little group of people before we ever built a building that we would put stretch marks on this building. And I was already making plans that were easy on us to build. And I got challenged by a pastor friend of mine when I told him. He said, is that really putting stretch marks on this building? And we really sat down and did the math, and we feel like we can grow to 1,000 people on the weekend. And we'll unfold that as we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. In this building, you're talking about stewardship, before we ever build a building. But to do that, we have to constantly identify areas that decrease or limit our capacity to grow. Now, that's going to take some sacrifice on some of our parts. I'm going to say one here this one hurts because it's been a passion of my son-in-law. Some of you didn't know. If you're newer to the church, you didn't know the barista we have back here making all these great specialty drinks is my son-in-law, Andy Washam. And my daughter has been in there. She's the dark-headed girl in there helping him. And it's been wonderful. In fact, it's been a bit of a signature and a great source of enjoyment for so many of us. But we looked at it really hard, and it was very difficult because it's a tremendous passion of Andy's. It's been a great gift to the church. It forms lines. It actually restricts people because we've got a machine that costs thousands of dollars that can only make these things so fast. And so you can only go as fast as the machine. And so people would have to stand in line after service had started. Then as we grow and it's very difficult. It's almost like the worship team. It's not something you just walk up and you know how to do. It's very difficult to train people. So it's very dependent on one person. So Andy and I talked. We prayed. We went back and forth. This was not an easy decision. Now, Mission Cafe is alive and well, and they're already planning some wonderful things, but everything in Mission Cafe moving forward will be free. We'll talk more about what the mission of Mission Cafe is when we regather, but we will no longer make specialty drinks. We'll have some wonderful free things. We're ramping that up to a whole nother level, but we won't be able to make the special. I know, I feel that, I hear this, because I've actually had people say that is the best coffee I've ever had, and it is.
Absolutely.
It really is. They've done a dynamic job. This was probably the hardest decision that we made in eliminating something. So grieve that. Now, having said that, that opens up people. Since we're not passing the plate anymore, we won't have to pass communion elements. This opens up a lot of, they're already doing it. This opens up a lot of volunteerism for other areas. Like, for instance, you may not realize this. How many people did you need initially just to start the online campus?
16.
16 people. So, and we're talking about, when we come back, we're talking about live streaming, continuing live stream both services. And so that'll even have to grow. So there'll be plenty of places to serve, but we're going to make changes. Now, people probably think pastors love change. No. Listen, if I go home and Lori moves the furniture, I freak out, okay? If she changes the meatloaf, I lose my mind. I don't like change. This whole thing has been nuts for me. Watkins Cafe, if you don't open soon so I can get my oatmeal,
Look out. Don't get bad around
I'll
here.
break in. Anyway, I don't like change. This may weird you out, but when we were going to go to 2 services, I had anxiety. I did not want to do it. As much as we planned, as prepared as we were, I almost called it off. I wasn't going to do it, but I literally sat in my office in a funk going, I don't want to do this. Now, I love it. I've enjoyed it. So we're not making change for change's sake. I don't believe in that, and I don't do that. If we make change, it's been thought about, prayed about, hopefully talked about, and it's so we can continue to grow. I'll say another change. I'll take the blame for this one. Pastor Rich mentioned it. Part of the new norm, and I'm going to literally throw up at some point, be using that word. I'm really already sick of it. But some things will stay. And so for a whole nother level of professionalism and courtesy, we will always train our guest services staff to never, now listen to my words here, okay? Never initiate physical contact. We will also teach them to never reject it, okay? So the difference is if you walk up to me and I bear mug you, you don't have a choice. And I'm on staff here at the church. If you come up and you want to hug me, you know what? I'm going to hug you. So we're never going to reject it, but we do not want someone who has a concern about that. Or I'm going to be honest with y'all, you probably don't consciously think about this, but as we grow, that's not everybody's love language. And I've been told that's the reason I know. That's not my love language. Sorry. We don't want any, we want church to be the safest place in the world, not just from a health standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint. And you don't always know how physical contact affects some people who've gone through traumas, certain traumas in their life, but they do show up to churches, thank God. And I don't think I've been as mindful of that. I'm highly convicted of that. And so this is about a whole nother level of love and respect and professionalism from our staff when you're volunteering or whatever out, but a reciprocation and a love to receive. Somebody wants to shake hands or whatever. You're never going to see me turn that down. So, yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about that.
I'll mention one other thing that you may not necessarily see, but just so you know that we're all willing to make whatever changes we need to make to facilitate the growth that God brings to Pathway. We're out of Pathway Kids classrooms. Upstairs, we have Pathway Kids classrooms and offices. And at one point in time, again, before we knew about any of this that was coming up, we had been challenged with the question, would you be willing to give up your office to allow for growth for Pathway Kids? And we basically grieved it and went, but then we said, okay, well, if we needed to, we could. Well, through all of this, 2 of our staff members, 3 actually, are going to be working from home. They're going to continue working from home. They're doing that now. They're going to continue working from home to open up those 2 offices for Pathway Kids classrooms. And so just again today in a meeting with Pastor Kim, talking about how we're going to be able to use those 2 classrooms now to be able to expand that ministry to the point where we can put some stretch marks on this facility upstairs. So you may not necessarily see that difference, but just so you know, there are other things that are happening to make sure that we're maximizing the use of this facility.
The only thing that we want changed is our heart for souls. We'll do anything. We'll tear down any wall. We'll change any program. We'll stop, start, or change anything that we do other than we won't stop winning souls until Christ comes. That's our passion. That's our drive. That's our command. And so everything else we're flexible on. So thanks for understanding.
Well, that was very good. We got one last question. Somebody asked for just a quick recap of everything we talked about today. I know that seems like a lot, so let's narrow it down to just our plan moving forward. Just a quick recap for those who joined in towards the end. If you guys
bullet
could
point phase 1, 2, 3 real quick.
Absolutely. We're moving through 3 phases as we lead to the reopening of the main campus. Phase 1, which actually began yesterday and will move through out the next couple of weeks through May the 16th, is basically the same type of restrictions now, weekend worship, only online exclusively, but then throughout the week, we can have groups of up to 10 individuals that meet in the homes or at our main campus. So that's for this next phase of phase 1. Starting on May the 17th, we enter into phase 2, which will then open it up to 50 individuals that can meet throughout the week, small groups, lead teams. And again, worship would be online exclusively for the 2 Sundays within phase 2, and that'll take us through May the 30th. And then at the beginning of phase 3, on Sunday, May 31st, Pentecost Sunday, is when the main campus will reopen for weekend worship. We'll continue to offer the online worship experience as well through our online campus. So both of these options are available to you. But May 31st is when we began phase 3, and we open up the main campus for weekend worship. There'll be no restriction as far as social distancing, but we will take the precautions of masks and PPE and hand sanitizing and precautions throughout our Pathway Kids classes to make sure that everybody stays healthy. So we'll have all those precautions in place. And again, if you have not done so, you can go back and look at either a graphic form of this to show you all the steps encapsulated, or you can also look at a full-blown detailed report. That's all on the website, pathwayliving.com. Up at the top, you can click on that and just look at it, or you can even download it as a PDF if you want to have that to refer to throughout this whole process. Was that quick enough?
Yeah, that was quick. So I'll just recap vision here a little bit. A lot of change, which text from my great friend here just said, boy, just a lot of change. And this particular person's had a lot of loss this year. So I want to speak to that, not this particular person's situation, because it's pretty heavy. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but sometimes we're afraid. So everybody knows the old bear in the woods thing. It's pretty appropriate if you're in the woods with a grizzly bear. We're not talking about that. It's natural to have fear. It's natural to have anxiety sometimes, or especially with unknown things. But there's a spirit, according to the Bible, of fear. So we're not talking about the emotion of fear, but the spirit of fear. What does the spirit of fear look like? Well, it's the opposite of peace and joy and a sound mind. And so when that spirit gets on you and it robs you of your peace, your joy, your love for others, and our soundness in our thinking, in other words, we're not able to make practical decisions because we're paralyzed by fear, that's a spirit. So what's the balance between, this is all just a big joke, which I've heard people say it. It's a pretty extreme position to take when people have lost their loved ones. I don't know how many it's up to now, but 60-some-odd thousand people. I don't care what you compare it to. That's 60-some-odd thousand people in the course of 2 months, Americans. We're talking about Americans right now, not even around the world, that have tragically, and from what I hear, agonizingly lost their lives. 60,000 families. It is a national tragedy. There is a time of mourning. We should not in any way take that lightly. On the other hand, or equally, we can't lose our joy, which is supernatural. And this is what people forget. You can find happiness, if it does it for you, on a roller coaster, okay? There's a lot of ways to be happy for a minute. But joy is supernatural. It's an impartation from God through the Holy Spirit. It is a fruit of or evidence of the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. You can't have joy outside of a life in Christ and an indwelling of the Holy Spirit. You can have a momentary happiness. That's why people take drugs. That's why they chase all kind of things, looking for more of that happiness. Joy is outside of your circumstances. But it's not being goofy and laughing at people's demise or something terrible going on. It's an inner working of the Holy Spirit. Peace, as we say, that passeth all understanding, as Scripture says, is supernatural. Now, can I tell you something? If we can't have joy, the joy of the Lord, which, by the way, is our strength, and the peace that passeth all understanding right now with the world looking on us, it whoop-de-doo when times are great. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just telling you, I love you. Get in your prayer closet, get your praise on, get your joy back. Come on, get the peace of the Lord on you. Grieve it if you got to grieve it. Cry it out if you got to cry it out. You know what you do after you grieve something? You bury it. You know what happens if you dig it up? Not pleasant at all. When you bury it, walk away. Now, I know that sounds like tough talk, but I'm talking to the saints of God right now. We have got to do what we've got to do to maintain our peace and our joy, or we'll lose our love. Then why are we here? If the world can't see in us what they've never experienced, where's the hope? Bill Hybels years ago said something that when he first said it, I went, I don't know about that because of my religious upbringing. He said that the hope of the world is the local church. And when he first said, I said, no, it's not. It's Jesus. And then the Lord said to me, what do you think the church is, you dummy? My body. We are the physical representation of Jesus Christ on the earth. Yeah. The first Jesus anybody's ever going to see is you. And they don't want to see a Jesus with no joy and no hope and no peace. Stay prayed up. Stay in the Word. And let's let the world see hope through the church. Amen? And I'm sorry, y'all. I love you. I'm sorry for the changes. And I know they affect all of us in different ways. Thank you for the trust you've put in us. We don't take that lightly. Yeah. We don't take that lightly. But I will say this, I will never not make a decision because I think it's going to be unpopular when I know it's what we need to do to continue to fulfill God's vision for the church. So I know times about gone.
Amen. So that was an awesome way to end this panel. Thank you guys for tuning in with our executive team, Pastor Mike, Pastor Rich, Pastor Trey. Thank you guys for taking your time to come and answer the questions of our congregation. I know they really enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing everybody at our Sunday services online, Pathway Facebook, or you can join us on YouTube, Roku, whatever your preferred platform is. Those services are at 9 and 10:45. We look forward to seeing you guys this Sunday. Have an awesome week.
Love
and
you.
God bless.